Hey everybody, welcome to the videos from my first look for week 15 of the NFL season over on DraftKings. Just a first look, first reaction to the pricing on the week 15 slate. We'll try to throw a lineup together with the information that we have very early in the week, but keep in mind a lot of things are going to change. So stay up to date and check out the other videos that I post throughout the week. But if you do find this helpful in any way possible, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, kind of official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Lots of extra content over there, projections, optimizers, ownership projections, cheat sheets, all that fun stuff, not just for the NFL, but the NBA, NASCAR, and the MLB as well. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. And if you have been on the fence of signing up for PrizePicks, right now is the absolute best time to do so. Not only do you get the instant deposit match when you sign up, use code CPEM for that. It's free money, just use it to your advantage. But they're running 12 days of Pickmas right now, which is their promo heading up to Christmas. So a promo each and every single day from now, well actually it started yesterday, until Christmas. So I would really highly recommend signing up. It's a very fun site to play on. I play on it every single week in addition to whatever I do on DraftKings. It's a blast. I have fun with it. It's been quite profitable because the lines are actually quite soft. If you find the right lines, you can definitely have a fun time over there. So I would recommend checking that out. And make sure you use code CPEN when you sign up, get that instant deposit batch bonus, and then take advantage of those promos as well. But I think it'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. And as always, we will start with the quarterback position. I'm going to be honest, not a whole lot of quarterbacks I find quite interesting this weekend. I would say there's 4 on my radar as of right now, and if Lamar happened to play and be fully healthy, good to go, which it doesn't sound like it's going to be the case, but $7,200, I think he would be interesting just because you get that rushing upside, but obviously dealing with the ankle sprain, obviously it's going to hurt his rushing upside even if it was good to go, so probably not going to be in on Lamar, but we'll have to see if he's even playing or not. But really, for me, it's kind of Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, Jalen Hurts, and Dak Prescott. I like all these guys as price points, and I like their matchups. Kyler Murray, he used his legs 2 weeks in a row. He didn't score last night, which sucked because, I mean, he had nearly 400 passing yards and over 60 yards on the ground. 22 fantasy points, which is pretty good for not scoring a touchdown. Just imagine if he actually got some touchdowns. Also had 2 interceptions and several bad throws in that game. But he's facing Detroit. If we can get 40-plus yards on the ground and maybe 250-plus through the air and a few touchdowns, hopefully a rushing touchdown, I think he could be definitely a very good fantasy play at $8,000, so he's close to it, $7,900. But thing is, I feel like we can get similar upside with guys that are around $1,000 cheaper. So I'm not really huge on Kyler Murray, but I do think he's an interesting option just because he's facing Detroit, which you should never be scared of their defense whatsoever. So I think Kyler is fine. You can obviously stack him with whichever wide receiver you prefer. Then we have Matthew Stafford here, great game. In the same game we just talked about with Kyler Murray last night versus the Arizona Cardinals, and has 3 straight weeks of 3 passing touchdowns for Matthew Stafford and around 24 fantasy points. I think he's one of the best plays in the slate here. Based in Seattle, you shouldn't be scared of their defense. They have one of the highest implied team totals on the slate. Only $7,000. Very easy to stack him because you just plug in Cooper Kupp. Now, it's not easy because of the price point. I mean, it's tough to pay up for Cooper Kupp. He's around $9,000 this weekend, but you know what you're getting. Like, Cooper Kupp does not bust. It just doesn't happen. You're going to get 10-plus targets, and he's probably going to catch 8-plus of them and get over 100 yards and probably score. So, I mean, if you just want to stack him and Matthew Stafford, no problem with that whatsoever, and you could obviously just run it back with like a DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett. I think it's a great way to go in any format this weekend. Jalen Hurts expected to be fully good to go versus Washington here. They're giving up the most points per game to the quarterback position this year. Jalen Hurts could always be a little bit up or down, but before, like earlier in the season, I mean, he was just the most consistent fantasy option at quarterback each and every single week just because of his legs. I mean, if you're looking at the past 5 games, what he's done on the ground, 77, 69, 55, 62, 71, terrible passer, typically in the 100-yard range. But if you can just have a good day on the ground, get to the end zone, and maybe throw a touchdown or two, and Washington is not really stopping fantasy quarterbacks too often, I think Jalen Hurts is definitely in play for me at only $6,600, assuming he's at full health and good to go, which is what's right in the update here on December 12th. So I'll choose to believe that, and I think it's $6,600, he will grade out quite well. I think you could definitely play him in cash games this weekend. Then we have Dak Prescott here at $6,500. He was looking like a really good option, in my opinion, here, because I won't say it's easy to stack him because you know where the ball is going, because there are several options in this offense, because you have CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup, but it's easy to stack him because none of those guys are like super expensive every single week. So Dak at $6,500 is way too cheap in a good matchup versus the Giants, Justin Herbert, and the Chargers without Keenan Allen. Absolutely lit them up last week. And earlier in the season, Dak Prescott versus the Giants had around 25 DraftKings points. Not saying it's a given that'll happen again, but 300 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. Don't think this Giants defense will offer too much resilience here. But with that being said, I think I'm going to go with the Rams stack here. It's very close, Rams and Cowboys. They both look very good, but their quarterbacks are underpriced. The Cowboys stack is definitely cheaper than the Rams because you don't have to pay $9,000 for like a CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper. Unfortunately, we do with the Ram stack, but I think there's some cheap running backs we can use this week, so I think we can make it work. So we're going to plug in Stafford, and he also plays at 425, and whenever I'm close on a couple players, I've always leaned towards using the guy in the late game just because it makes me feel way better having more minutes remaining as the slate progresses. There's no reason that should ever be a consideration for you unless it's in the flex spot, but because, I mean, it doesn't mean that the guys in the 1 p.m. can't score more points. It just feels better, to be honest. But we're going to go with the Ram stack, and then getting a pass catcher with them, I don't think it's any surprise here, but Cooper Kupp is definitely the top option. You have Van Jefferson at $5,600, and Odell $5,400. All three of these guys had great games last week, or I should say last night if you're watching this video on Tuesday. Cooper Kupp did his usual thing. Van Jefferson caught a bomb around 52 yards, I want to say. Then Odell actually had a pretty decent game and caught a slant for a touchdown very early on. But the guy we're going to plug in, Cooper Kupp, massively expensive, $9,000. That's only going to leave us around $5,000 left for the remaining spots. But I think we have enough value to make it work. And I mean, Stafford and Cooper Kupp should have another good game as they typically do each and every single week, especially Cooper Kupp. He has like one bad game this year with 13 points, and that was versus Arizona very early on where they got blown out. Besides that, the guy is just straight money. So moving on to the running back position, not liking any of these spend-up options, and I am not sure why Zeke continues to be this expensive. Like, I realize he's got the name value of being Ezekiel Elliott, plays for the Cowboys, but, I mean, he's just not worth this price point. Even with Tony Pollard out, like, they were using Corey Clement, and he just, like, it's ugly. It's just not fun watching him play football. 12 carries, 45 yards, did have 6 targets, which is great. Only got one of them, but 9 fantasy points, 6.7 the week before that versus New Orleans. It's a great matchup on the ground, though. The Giants are terrible versus the run, bottom 5 DVOA, so maybe this is a get-right game for Zeke, and he scores a couple of touchdowns. But if Zeke isn't scoring, you're probably not happy. Like, look at these rushing numbers the past 5 weeks. 41, 32, 25, 40. Like, that's terrible. That's awful. Awful. And the attempts haven't been there either. Like, he's getting targets, which is great. Like, that's the only good thing that's saving him right now, but in touchdowns on the goal line. But if he doesn't get those, I mean, he's just not going to be a good play, especially at $7,300. Like, that's just terrible. So I'm probably going to save some money this weekend. I don't really like any of these spend-up options. I mean, Najee Harris is fine just because he catches passes, but it took him a long while to get going versus the Vikings. I think, was that the Sunday night game? No, that was a Thursday night game. It took him a long while. It ended up being a good play, but it did take him a bit. But I like this 6K range and kind of the upper 5K range. So James Conner, if Chase Edmonds happens to be out, even if Chase Edmonds is back, it's his first game from IR, so I don't think we'll get a heavy workload. But Conner, I mean, he's not great on the ground, but in the air last week, or last night again, you were watching the game last night, nearly 100 receiving yards, 9 of 9 targets, 33.5 points, plus he's a touchdown scoring machine. Like, I always say, these touchdowns can't keep up, but he just keeps scoring. So guys are magnet around the red zone, and obviously if Chase Edmonds even plays, if they get around the red zone, they're going to use James Conner. And at $6,400 versus Detroit, I really don't think they'll need to use Edmonds too much. They should be handling this game. It'll probably get you close to 20 total touches, probably 15 plus on the ground here from Conner, and probably a good shot at the end zone facing Detroit. $6,400, and he had a great game. So everyone watched the game on Monday night, so they could get an ownership bump as well. But I do like him here. I don't like James Conner personally. I just don't think he's that great of a player. But I mean, he's been scoring so many touchdowns this year, and he looked pretty good. He had that amazing one-hand catch on Monday night. Whatever. I'm not a big fan of James Conner. I don't think he's that great of a player. But I mean, if he's going to get the usage, and especially on the red zone, and keep scoring touchdowns and get passing down work, I got to be interested. And then after that, again, the mid-range is loaded. Melvin Gordon is questionable. It's a thumb sprain. I don't think it's going to keep him from playing. He entered the game, re-entered the game. They both had fantastic games, him and Javonte Williams. I still think he can play both here, playing Cincinnati. I mean, it's not like the greatest matchup in the world, but I think Javonte is certainly in play. Eli Mitchell, if he's good to go versus Atlanta, $6,200, he'll probably get you 20-plus carries. I like that. They don't mind feeding Eli Mitchell the ball just as much as they can, and I definitely see that being a spot where they do so versus Atlanta, but as of right now, we don't know if he's going to play or not. Antonio Gibson versus Philly, busted as major chalk versus Dallas. Kind of got benched for a while, too, after that fumble, only 5.1 fantasy points. But besides that, weeks prior, he was great. And plus, Washington was down, too. They were trailing by quite a bit. Game ended up getting close at the end, but really wasn't that close for the majority of the game. But for that, just tons of volume. I realize J.D. McKissick is probably going to be back, but I don't think it's going to stop him. Like, it's a great matchup versus Philly. He should be using the passing game still a little bit. I always go back to that Seattle game where McKissick played, where he still had 7 targets because McKissick got hurt very late in that game. I think we're probably going to get 20-plus touches out of Gibson. They're just not going to kick him to the curb. Like, the guy's been good for them this year. So I don't mind plugging Gibson at $6,000. He does take a hit, assuming McKissick is back, but I still think we can play him. $6,000 seems like a pretty fair price point. We could plug another running back in the flex spot, but I don't know what kind of money we're going to have to work with yet, so we'll try to save that for the end maybe. But As much as I like to play guys like Devontae Adams, great play every week. Debo Samuel, great play every week. Gets rushing attempts as well. Stephon Diggs, like all these guys are great plays. They finally priced up Deontay Johnson. He's always been a little bit too cheap. In the mid 6K range, he got priced up finally, but he deserves it. I mean, he gets targets, so many targets every single week. And the guy's just a good football player. But we can't afford any of these guys because if we plugged in, like let's just say CeeDee Lamb, that's going to leave us 3,500 left, which, yeah, I mean, it could work, but it's like it'll just be punt after punt after punt. I think a better idea would just to try to be plugging in maybe a cheap tight end, cheap defense, so we know what we had to work with money-wise. So heading over to the tight end position, as much as I like to play George Kittle, who's went off the past 2 weeks, Mark Andrews got like 10 of 10 targets last week for over 100 yards and a touchdown. And that was with Lamar Jackson out. Like, he did pretty much all of his damage with Huntley, so I don't think he's bothered by whoever the quarterback is in Baltimore. But we can't afford any of these guys. It's just not going to work. So we're going to have to plug in a cheapie. If Tyler Higbee's out again, I mean, he tested positive and tested negative twice, and he still wasn't able to play. I bet he'll be back this week, so just monitor that. But if he happens to be out, I'm not sure what his backup is priced at, but it's got to be down here pretty low. But anyway, a guy that I have a lot of interest in is Brevin Jordan here at $2,200 versus Jacksonville. Now, this is going to be an overall pretty ugly game. I think the over-under is sitting at like 39.5. But the past few weeks for Brevin Jordan haven't been terrible. He actually got into the end zone versus Seattle, but he had 7 targets in that game. 4 the week prior, and 3 versus the Jets. You could look at James O'Shaughnessy if you want another cheap punt option. I don't think he's too much more expensive than he was the week prior. $3,200 versus Houston. I think he's somewhat interesting. He keeps getting targets. Doesn't really do much with them, but he is getting the targets, which is fine. But I think Brevin Jordan's actually kind of interesting here, and he offers you just some salary relief, which we definitely need it. Already putting in Cooper Kupp. So that opens up us close to around $5,000. I'm going to spend up here. If we go all the way down low, which is something I try to do, I try to find the most viable defenses going from bottom to top. Panthers versus Buffalo, probably not going to go there. Lions versus the Cardinals, already got James Conner in my lineup, so that just wouldn't make sense. Jets versus Miami. The Jets are terrible defensively, but I mean, maybe that's okay versus the Dolphins, but probably not. Not going to pick on the Packers. Well, I will say none of these guys really look too appealing. Maybe the football team versus Jalen Hurts. That's not super scary. I think you could probably roll with them if you wanted to. But the Bills versus the Panthers at $3,100, you're kind of spending a little bit, but playing at home, they're massive favorites. I think they're 10 or 13-point favorites at home facing Carolina. I'm not scared of any quarterback they roll out, whether it be Cam Newton or whoever, but preferably Cam. He's always good for some pretty bad throws. So the Bills defense, who has been pretty solid this year, we'll plug them in. Leaves us $5,200 left for our last 3 spots, which I think we can definitely make work. We can't really afford any expensive players, but we can probably go solid with the mid-range. And looking at some more mid-range wide receivers, guys like Jamison Crowder, $5,000 versus the Dolphins. Typically a guy that will get targets. Was not great last week versus the New Orleans Saints, but I think he's fine at $5,000. You got Sterling Shepard at $4,700, although the quarterback situation for the Giants is definitely pretty gross. Mike Glennon, Daniel Jones is seeing a hand specialist. Well, I mean, I'm not sure if he's going to play or not, but kind of a gross situation for anybody on Dallas. It's kind of ugly down low. I mean, pure punt options, I'm not really seeing much that would stand out to me too much. Look, Laquan Treadwell, $3,300 versus Houston, is actually seeing targets on this team. He had 6 targets last week, 5 the week prior, and 8 versus Atlanta. Like, it's not bad. It does open up some salary for us. If you wanted to just plug in a dirt cheap option like Treadwell, I'm not sure if I'd go there in cash gains, but if he opens up enough salary for you, I mean, it's not the worst thing out there. Going to flex just to try to get another solid running back in. I'll probably want to stick around that 5 to 6K range. We already have the Rams passing attack, but I do want to say Sony Michel at $5,800. I'm not sure who's going to be the running back for this team. It could be Henderson, could be Michel. I know Henderson's on the IR COVID list. Could get activated. Not sure what the situation is going to be like yet. But if you happen to be out, Sony Michel's only $5,800, but they're both pretty much the same price. But whoever starts is going to get a massive workload. And facing Seattle, they've been terrible versus running backs this year. I think they're all fine. But since I already have the passing attack, I'm not going to double up with the run game, although they do get targeted, but just not heavily. Javonte Williams, Eli Mitchell probably look like the best candidates here. I don't know if we have like a complete update. Nope, not since December 10th. So not sure what's going to go on with Mitchell. Javonte, we know is playing. The guy, even with Melvin Gordon playing last week. So if you just want to hope Eli Mitchell's in, plug him in at $6,200. Leaves us exactly $6,200 for the last wide receiver spot. And it's actually perfect because we have DK Metcalf at $6,200, who is really cheap. I mean, I get why. He just hasn't really been producing, but it's perfect for our stack that we have because it's a run back option for the Rams. So I don't mind that. Jalen Ramsey is on the COVID list right now. If he happened to miss again, that'd be a massive bump for DK Metcalf. So I really don't think that's a bad looking lineup. You have the Rams stack with Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp, ran back with DK Metcalf. You have James Conner, Antonio Gibson, a running back, as well as Eli Mitchell if he happens to play. And then you have Laquan Treadwell as just a dirt cheap punt option who actually is seeing typically 5+ targets the past 3 weeks. The Bills defense and a punt option with Brevin Jordan, who did see 7 targets last weekend. So obviously a lot can change throughout the week, but that's not a bad looking first look lineup. Not sure if Eli Mitchell's playing or not. If he does, great spot versus Atlanta for a guy that's probably going to get you 20+ carries. But with that being said, I think it'll be it for the video. So I hope it was helpful, and if it was, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. If you want to take that one step further, become an official member over on Patreon. Link is down below in the description for that. Not just for the NFL, but the NBA currently, then the MLB and NASCAR pretty soon. Only a couple more months for that. So I really would highly recommend checking that out. If you do enjoy the free content over on YouTube, optimizers, ownership projections, all that fun stuff. And last but not least, this video is sponsored by PrizePicks. Right now is seriously the best time to sign up because they're doing 12 days of Pickmas, 12 straight promos. And if you do sign up, you can get an instant deposit match bonus, then use that to your advantage because it's free money, and then you can use the promos as well. So it really is the best time to sign up, and I would recommend it. But I think that'll be pretty much it. I will stop rambling, and I wish you guys a great start to your week.